got such a fun story about a really random miracle with a hand. But before we get into that, I just need to settle a debate with my roommates. Can you guys help me out with this for a second? I currently live with 3 roommates, and when we first moved in, we had a big debate. When is the appropriate time to empty the trash can? Do you have this debate at home sometimes? Do you have this? Because and listen, I was very intentional. I brought the Cadillac of trash cans to our apartment, okay? Stainless steel, it does that thing where you can like push on it and then the lid opens. It's amazing, okay? So I remember the first day we moved into this apartment, I put that trash can in there, put the bag in, and I was like, great, job's done. 4 of us in an apartment, as you can imagine, trash fills up just a little quick, okay? So I still remember day 1, everything was fine. Day 2 was fine. Day 3, everything's fine. And then day 4 is that day, you know, whenever you see the trash can and it's like almost full and you're like, it's not full. So you push it down. You're like, it'll be fine. And you realize, like, look at all this space that I have. It's great. I can leave it at least another week. It'll be fine. So then day 5 is fine, and day 6, and then day 7, you know the lid, how it's supposed to close, and it just doesn't. Well, that was day 7. Day 8, that lid was just wide open. We didn't even care anymore. And we're just waiting, and nobody's doing this. Nobody's even looking at it. We're trying to avoid it. Because in my mind, I'm like, he cooks all the time. It is his job to do this. And this guy just decided to get all these Amazon packages, so clearly it's his fault. And I'll never forget this because it's burned into my memory. Our one roommate sitting us all down, lecturing us. Why did none of you decide to take out the trash? I just waited to see how long it would be until one of you finally decided to take out the trash. So now out of spite, I'm never emptying that thing. It's just going to stay full forever. And what's interesting is our story today involves really a situation like this. People that were seeing an issue and didn't want to deal with it. But I mean, come on. Who actually wants to take out the trash? I mean, the situations that exist in our life all the time, because there's things that feel like they're not our responsibility, and we can have some basic excuses as to why we shouldn't have to take care of them. Some of my favorite are, someone else can donate to the kids overseas who don't have clean water to drink from. Or how about, I pay taxes. Shouldn't somebody more qualified take care of helping people that are unhoused on the streets? Or I've never contributed to racist stereotypes. It's not my responsibility to fix the mess our country is in. Pick whatever social, spiritual, or material situation that you can think of that is our overflowing trash can. I think we have to get to the point and realize as human beings, we cannot solve the mess. If anything, we make it worse. I mean, think about it. Whenever there's a trash can, so to say, in our culture today, what's the main thing we do first? We figure out what the other political party did to cause that mess. I mean, have you ever watched the news and I've just been amazed at like how one terrible situation can be linked to a political party. It's incredible. It's what we do. We're really great at being able to say, they did this, they contributed to it. Whether it's not a politician or whatever, we're just able to look and say, they're responsible, not me. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but tell me if you've seen this, because we're now a few years into cancel culture, and at this point, I've seen people with the most heartfelt apologies stand up and say, I know that I said something and posted something that was culturally insensitive. I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to do better. Do you see the change? Do you see it? If anything, I see things persist. Problems don't change. There's things that continue to happen and they're not addressed because, to put it really simple, we as human beings, as a society, are expert observers. We can come up with theories behind problems, we can diagnose problems, but we rarely, genuinely fix or even engage in problems. And this is how it was at the very beginning of time that we see in the Bible. The first human beings, Adam and Eve, they sinned, they make this huge mess. And what do they do first? Genesis 3:8 tells us, when the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife, Adam and Eve, heard the Lord God walking about in the garden. So they hid from the Lord God among the trees. Said, well, watch and see what happens. So they chose to observe rather than even confronting the issue that was at hand, their issue, mind you. And then when they finally talk to God, look what happens. This is verse 11. God says, have you eaten from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat? And the man replied, it was the woman. She gave me the fruit and I ate it. I mean, come on, just be honest, who's pulled an excuse like this before? Like, they made me do it. They were the one who told me to do it. They said it was a good idea. Everybody else was doing it. I thought it was the right thing to do. We just inevitably, as human beings, are drawn towards observing rather than taking any action. We're actually drawn towards taking whatever that trash can is and just kicking it over and creating the mess even bigger. I was told I'm not allowed to do this illustration on stage, and I apologize. I would have shown it to you. But just picture it, the mess that we as human beings make so much of the time. And we live in a culture that points out wrongs but doesn't do anything about it. Here's what I know, though. God's agenda is not just determining who's at fault. It's not just observation, it's engagement. This is what we understand in the person of Jesus. Jesus, who lived a completely perfect life, who said, I am going to enter into your mess. I am going to step into your context. I am going to step in and not just watch, but I am going to engage, heal, and restore. And what we see in Jesus is his death, his resurrection, and now because of that, there's something that changes with us when we choose to follow Jesus. It's not as if we have to do good things in order to act like we're Christians. No, when God comes into our lives, it changes us, where we can't sit on the sidelines anymore, standing in the bushes like Adam and Eve, watching, but instead we now have the opportunity. We now are equipped, we are enabled to actually engage in the problems, to be like Jesus. This is what we see. And let me just put this whole message down into a statement for you. It's that being like Jesus requires me to engage in problems rather than to observe them. If we want our lives to look like Jesus, it will require us to acknowledge that the problems around us cannot just be observed, but they have to be engaged with. And I told you, this sermon is about a really random miracle with the hand, a moment where everybody else just looked and observed, and Jesus doesn't just show us what happened, but what can still happen today. We're going to be looking at Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, at a short story in which Jesus does something pretty incredible. Verse 1 of this passage starts off saying, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. But Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath? Or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. And then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand and it was restored. And at once the Pharisees went away and met with their supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. In just 6 verses, we read about how Jesus saw a problem with a man's hand, engaged with it through love, grief, and anger, and we saw something change here. But isn't it nice to know that Jesus was 100% a human being and 100% God? He's showing us how we can do this, how we can approach problems. Because it's remarkable to read stories like this and go, man, I wish things could happen like that again today. I wish that was something that we could read about, that occurs this week. And I'm here to remind you today that God that we read about, that God that we serve, actually didn't just exist in the past. He exists in your heart today. This is not just something we read as an encouragement to say, look, God could do this in the past. No, I'm here to remind you, he can do that this week. He can do that and has a desire to do that through you. That's why we have a relationship with him. That's why we choose to follow him. This is the power of what occurs when we follow Jesus. And I don't know about you, but I'm done just watching. There's too many people that are observing problems. I want to stop just seeing things that are going on, and I want to actually respond. I want to engage. I want to be like Jesus. Can we start doing this together? I want to walk you through just a few steps on how we move from observation to engagement. Let me rephrase that. I want to walk you through some steps on how we become more like Jesus. See, what we see in this story, the first thing is that we have to have our eyes open to problems everyone else has normalized. Everyone else looks and says, this is just normal. This is the way it's always been. That's not Jesus' attitude. To remind you, verses 1 and 2 says, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. He noticed a a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. See where they're looking and how Jesus is looking at something different? If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus, again, is looking at the hand. Everyone else is looking at the rule book. They weren't watching to see what Jesus was doing or why Jesus was doing it. They just wanted to see, is he going to follow what we want him to do? Doesn't this sound like such a politically charged environment? Isn't it good to know Jesus also had to walk through some of the same situations we do? What's unique here is that whenever people would go to this synagogue to pray, as they would typically do traditionally, everybody would pray, and part of that prayer that they would do is they would lift a hand up in the air. It'd be really easy to think about this story and go, well, was the man hiding his hand? Was it really that noticeable? They all lifted their hands in the air. You would have seen it. You would have noticed it. You would have recognized it. And all these religious people thought this was normal. That's just the way his hand's always been. We don't know if his hand was like that for 24 hours, 24 years. Doesn't matter. When we show up and there is an issue like that, we have a responsibility to recognize it and do something about it. And just think about this. What are the problems you've maybe become too comfortable looking at? I'll start. One of the problems I'm too comfortable looking at is when I see news stories of people in other countries that, due to different conflicts, no longer have a home to live in. That's one that I'm too comfortable looking at. I think we, just in this area, might be a little bit too comfortable understanding that this is the loneliest area of the country with, ironically, the most people. And somehow, we don't want to share our lives with anybody. Because we're just very much comfortable saying like, that's just not going to do that. They don't fit my social circle. They don't fit the type of people that I want to associate with. I think we're a little bit too comfortable with saying that the loudest and most prominent way that I'll follow Jesus is going to be in the comments that I post online. I think some of us are a little bit too comfortable saying, I won't say it to your face, but yeah, when I'm on my screen, I'll say anything that I feel comfortable to, because that's me following Jesus. We'll get into a moment why we dismiss problems, but I need you to see that even when it comes down to problems, we often mislabel them and we often misunderstand them. These religious leaders, their issue with Jesus wasn't what he did. It just came down to when he did it. And it's ironic because they're missing the whole point. The Sabbath day is meant to be this day where we're saying, God, I trust you by not having to work, by saying, if I take one day off, I can still trust that God will provide. That's a whole other message we'll have for another day. But listen, what we're seeing here is that this day is about restoration, about trust, about seeing the provision of God. And these guys are looking at it like, it's a rule. It's about certain things we have to follow. These religious leaders could not be further from understanding what this day is for. Matthew even writes about this further, saying in chapter 12, verses 11 and 12, and he answered, Jesus is talking to them, if you had a sheep that fell into a well on the Sabbath, wouldn't you work to pull it out? Of course you would. And how much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Yes, the law permits a person to do good on the Sabbath. Can I tell you the fear and the reality that we exist in today? The religious leaders of this passage are not gone. They exist in every church. It's possible that we act like them. Let me ask you, are we procrastinating, putting off, or waiting until we finally feel ready, or like it was our idea, before we finally start addressing problems? Can we choose that we're no longer going to wait anymore? Because let me tell you, the problems that exist around us are not new. They're ones that have been stacking up and developing for years. I mean, now the current context of what we live in is that in our world, 1 in 5 people suffer from a mental health illness, whether that's anxiety or depression or anything beyond that. And we might say, wow, look, we're diagnosing it more. You're right. We are able to see it more. Do you see it changing more though? Because what I've seen is we've been able to recognize problems more, but I don't see any solutions. I don't see any real ones of anybody that's actually able to step up. And can I tell you the best solution for all of this? The only solution for all of this. His name is Jesus. And there are so many other people that will try to take you other ways. But let me tell you this, the answer to every problem is found in Jesus. And when we don't have Jesus, we just diagnose it. We just see it. Can I tell you, we currently have 27.6 million people worldwide who are trafficked. Some of them are right around us. Some of them are here in our city. For us here, just last year, there were 88,000 people living in shelters. And you might say, wow, well, I'm glad we have the shelters. There's problems that led up to that number. There's problems that occur all around that. There's problems, and there's people that you and I both pass on the street every single day that we could have actually maybe done something for. Jesus shows us what can occur when we engage now. You and I walk past those people, and we've treated them like it's the Sabbath every single day. But what could occur if we chose to do something good? If we chose to engage like the problem like Jesus did and didn't treat it like it was something normal? I mean, you and I are called to see how Jesus saw and do what he did so that people like this man in this story can be restored. So practically, how do we start? Pray and ask God for your eyes to be opened, that you would start to see things differently. And don't take every single thing that you hear from other people to be the truth. Because the reality is this: some people will try to diminish and take down the different things that you see as problems. And I really want to speak to you on this for a second. There are certain things that God does not put a burden on everybody's hearts, but he puts a burden on individual hearts. There's certain things that you will care about that a lot of other people might not see. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. That means that God's opening your eyes. That means that God is trying to get your attention to say, I don't need them to see it, I need you to see it. I don't need any politician, I don't need any other leader to see this. I need you to start recognizing God put something in there. There's certain things you've been angry about, you've been mad about for years, and you've wondered, why is nobody doing this? Well, why aren't you? Could it be that maybe God has put something in your heart, in your life, very specific for you to do? I think maybe God has been opening a lot of our eyes to things, and we've just been unaware for most of the time that it was God speaking. But this is how we move out of observation to engagement. This is how we become more like Jesus. We don't start calling it normal anymore. We allow God to be able to open our eyes to see things as Jesus saw them. If we continue on in the verse, in the passage, it says, Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, come and stand in front of everyone. Then he turned to his critics and asked, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath? Or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it? But they wouldn't answer him. Catch this. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, hold out your hand. So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. Here's the second thing we do to move out of observing. We need to have a heart that is tender where other people's are hard. We need to have a heart that is tender where other people's are hard. Your heart matters, not just your eyes. Seeing a problem is one thing, but your heart being able to respond. This situation, Jesus is grieved. I mean, these men's hearts are so hardened that they care more about the Sabbath, more about an animal stuck in a well, more about a rule than a human life. But can I clue you in on something real quick? The society we currently live in would in some cases care more about an animal than a baby. It would care more about a border than those in need. It would care more about a rule than the needs of a human life. And if I can be abundantly clear, this is the reality for whichever political side you align with. The sad part is that I've seen people that get so deep into politics and think I can take Jesus there with me. You really can't. And what happens is when we start going deeper into our politics, what happens is we stand on an emotional wall. And whether it's politics or an ideology, we stand on these things that prevent us from being able to reach and engage on anything, but instead watch and say, look at that problem, somebody should do something. Jesus didn't stand on a wall. Jesus went to people. Jesus didn't stand behind some type of an ideology and say, well, I would do it if somebody else, or I would do it. Jesus didn't care. Jesus said, there's a problem, let's do something about it. Enough is enough of just standing on these things. But now we have to ask ourselves, well, how do I know if I have a tender heart in the first place? Or how do I know if it's hard? How would I even know the difference? Can I just clue you in? Let's just look into Jesus' emotions for a second. We have to do a little bit of some word studies in the Bible. Can I be a little bit of a nerd here with you for a second? Is that okay? Is that okay? So in the Bible, the New Testament specifically is written in Greek. I don't speak Greek, but I did my research, okay? So in the Bible, there's 3 different types of words used for anger, okay? The first one used is thumos. This is a sudden outburst of anger. This is what some of y'all have on your morning commute to work, okay? That's sudden outburst when somebody cuts you off. That's thumos. Now you have a biblical word for it, okay? It's that feeling you have when somebody stops at the top of the stairs on the subway because they need to check for directions. You know, you thought like there's like some problem. Nope, it's just somebody who's brand new trying to figure out where to go. The second type of anger is called paragosmos. This is an intense irritation. This feeling that you have where you've had this before, where it's just like the littlest thing somebody does and you just want to scream, just want to get mad. And it's always those little things where you're already frustrated and then you stub your toe and then you're like, everything's going wrong. Those moments. This is what the Bible talks about. This type of anger is the Bible whenever it says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Don't go to sleep with this. It's just not healthy, okay? But there's a third type of anger the Bible talks about called orge. This is a settled habit of mind. It's not operating all the times, but it's exhibiting itself in the same way when the occasion demands it. Or my personal favorite definition of this type of anger, righteous passion. Would you be surprised to find out the type of anger that Jesus had in this situation was not thumos? It was not paragosmos. It was orge. It was this level of righteous passion that he had to look at this situation and be able to say, I'm going to have some anger about this. Because if you're like me, I had this idea that following Jesus meant I got to be this really gentle person and I can't have any emotions and I got to walk around all nice. And trust me, we could use some more gentleness. But what Jesus did have more than anything was some emotions. Your emotions are not a bad thing. They're actually the thing that you need. And I realize at this point in history, we are overstimulated. We are just overloaded with so many different stories and things that are happening that are tragedies. And a lot of them are meant to manipulate us. But unfortunately, I think the action that we take so much of the time to this is apathy as a coping mechanism. And the issue with that is as we grow in our apathy, we also grow in our level of observation and we never engage. We say there's too many problems. There's too many things. How could I do anything? I want to remind you just the heart of God for a second. Because in case you've forgotten or you're curious, God sees every horrific event occurring in the world. He sees the wars. He sees everybody that's broken, every life that is taken, and he's not watching the headlines. He's seeing every individual life. He saw you in the moments whenever you thought that nobody sees me, nobody cares. What? Nobody's around me. God saw and God cared. And so much of his attitude towards it is righteous passion. It's this desire to see things changed. And whether you see it or not, God is working. He's moving. He's restoring. He's reviving. He's been at work. And part of how he'll continue to work is through you. We can't even comprehend just how much he's doing and the beauty of his restoration. The most practical way that we would look at this, and the most practical thing that I can tell you to be able to help you out with this, is that you have to engage with your feelings. And I recognize some of us did not come from homes where you were told you were allowed to have feelings. You were actually put down because of your feelings. You were told that's not how men act. That's not somebody who's strong. You're weak because you have emotions. This is not what I see in Jesus. In fact, what I see in Jesus is that whenever he had his emotions and was not overrun by them, but allowed them to be present, he was able to restore someone's life. So let me ask you, what are you feeling? And for a lot of us, we wouldn't really know, I don't know what I'm feeling most of the time. That's typically, for us men, that is just a problem we have. Not a societal one, just a genetic one. And what one thing is that I could tell you that would be very practical to help you out with this is to be able to look and say, what am I feeling? And the way we answer this so much of the time is by a feelings wheel. Whenever you're wondering as you walk through a situation and you're wondering, man, I feel like there's some things that are in my life right now. Have you ever been able to say out loud, in this situation right now, I feel frustrated. I feel withdrawn. I feel annoyed. Maybe it's more sad. It's, man, I feel grief towards this. I feel isolated, abandoned. I feel insecure. I feel scared. When we start to vocalize these emotions, what we're able to do is be more present with them. And when we're able to be more present with them, we're able to have real action. Because so much of what we do with our life is fight that and suppress that. We say, I don't want to know. Let me just go binge something. I don't want to know. Let me just go. There's so many things we can do to be able to isolate and suppress these emotions. But what we have to do is be able to engage with them. This is how we move out of observation to engagement. This is how we become more like Jesus. But what I saw here, and the last point on this, is that we need to be focused on people where others are focused on their image. And we get this from Mark 3:6. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. Yeah, cancel culture doesn't seem that bad now. This is the extent of what Jesus is dealing with, trying to do something, and this is what occurs. If I can just be honest, the biggest thing that keeps me from engaging with problems is the question of, what is everybody gonna think? And you might say, well, Colin, you're a pastor, you have to. Yeah, but like, what kind of pastor am I gonna be? Am I gonna be the guy that's out till 3 a.m. in a bar, being able to win people to Jesus, or from a lifestyle that's trying to be so holy, I have a regimented hours and hours and hours of prayer that from my life people would see Jesus? What I've seen personally is that the more I get concerned on my image, I get nothing done. The more we are concerned about what people think, we don't actually do a single thing because we're too concerned about what other people are going to say. And I know this isn't always a fun message to preach. It's not a fun message to hear, I can imagine. But I need you to understand, engaging with these problems will not always be comfortable, but they are necessary. You're often going to find judgment from others, rude commentary of your actions. You might even feel isolated. You might feel what Jesus felt when you start to do what Jesus did. Because when we choose to step into these things, I need you to understand that there's no problem that I've mentioned today that's just a societal complex. They are deeply spiritual. When you step into a problem, you're stepping into an active spiritual battle. You're stepping into something where it's more than just a problem that exists on the news. There's something deeper than that. I know that it can feel uncomfortable sometimes when you say, financially giving, that just, man, if I give, it's uncomfortable because I can't afford the same clothes. I can't go on the same vacations. I can't buy the same cars. I can't live the same lifestyle that I'd want to live. It's a little bit uncomfortable. But what happens whenever I give my money is that I set some practical things into motion that really impact things on a spiritual level. Can I tell you something real quick? Those people that you saw that are standing outside in the parking lot, I know it looks like, man, that's an uncomfortable job to serve in, out in the snow, especially right now. They're not just standing there because, they just like being out in the cold. They're not just standing at the door because they had nothing else to do on a Sunday. They're standing there because there's too many people who've walked into church before. Too many people that have walked through the doors and felt like, is this even a place I can be at? Is this a place that anybody would accept me? And they're holding a sign. They're shaking your hand. They're telling you, I'm glad to see you, as an act of spiritually saying, nobody else might have accepted you, but you're safe here. Every other place you might have been in might felt like you couldn't be safe. But this is a place for you to encounter Jesus. There's more going on. And I know it's uncomfortable, but listen, when we step out and we do it, we see something powerful occur. I'm not asking you to do some things that are unsafe or things that are just going to intentionally try to make people mad. What I'm telling you is that when you choose the person rather than the image, you act more like Jesus because he chose to heal rather than gain public favor. He knew that solving a problem was more important than catering to the hard-hearted, bitter group of people. Even in this whole subject of thinking through, what are we thinking with a crowd? I thought about renaming this point to, what crowd are you most focused on right now? Because Jesus had a few different crowds he could think of. And I want to just remind you what the Bible tells us about this. Hebrews 12:1 gives us an image about another crowd for a moment, if I could share this with you. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, and let me stop here for a second to tell you about this huge crowd of witnesses. Hebrews 11 goes through the stories of the Bible. It talks about the men who led 4 million slaves from Egypt into a land of freedom. It talks about the men who saw atrocities going on and said, I will step up. It talks about these people that we classically call the heroes of faith. And the Bible tells us that these people look at you. These people are watching you and they're cheering you on. So it says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. Can I ask you, which crowd matters more to you? There's a crowd of people that actually see the real you, a crowd of people that care about you, that you might not have ever known about, that are cheering you on. And then there's a crowd of people that their opinions change every month depending on what influencer says what. There's a group of people that you might even have for years of your life said, I just want them to respect me. I want them to like me. Can I just be honest? Even if you earned it, you still wouldn't like it. Even if you got that crowd to accept you, it still wouldn't be fulfilling enough. There's actually a whole group. There's actually a God who's looking at you right now saying, you don't have to try and strive and be something you're not. Step up. Do the thing that's been in your heart and watch what happens. Jesus wasn't concerned about this. In fact, Jesus steps up, and what he's able to do is restore a man's hands. What's the point of all this? Am I just trying to get you to do something, just to have some fun actions, go on for a week? No. Verse 4 articulates just the whole heart of this. Jesus says, is this a day to save life or to destroy it? And I believe that question's put in our hands today. Not just for Sunday, but this day and time for our lives. Is this a day to save life or to destroy it? Can I tell you, today is a day to save life. I believe that when you start to confidently step in and choose to actually engage rather than observe, you're going to see some things change. You're going to see that while other people in the past didn't even see problems, you're going to step into problems that other people have even tried to handle, and you're actually going to be able to step up and do something good. There's going to be problems that other people have so much bitterness towards that they can't even step into and be able to do anything about. But as you step into engage with the heart of Jesus, with a heart that is being able to include your emotions into it, you're going to see something change. Whenever you choose not to let any other person in a crowd dictate what you do, you're going to see exactly what Jesus saw, restoration. If I can just remind you, there's a trash can that's been overflowing with loads of messes that you and I both see all the time. It's time that we take out the trash. It's time that we step up. It's time that we do something. Let me make this even more practical for you, because I don't want you to feel this as this overwhelming responsibility to solve. My goal is that you feel equipped to engage and do something, to give up some of your time once a week to serve somewhere, whether it be at this church or an organization, somewhere where it matters, to show up with your finances and give and make a difference, to build a relationship with someone who needs you in their life. You have the opportunity to engage. I want to ask you to just close your eyes for a moment. I want you to just think through this moment that Jesus had. Picture it with me. A deformed hand up in the air. You can't miss it. It's something that everybody else is seeing. But for you right now, that deformed hand has a name. It's a problem that is very much weighing on your heart. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a social issue, maybe it's something that's going on. And in this moment, God would very much say to you, I need you to engage. We've watched long enough. There's power when Jesus steps in. I want to pray over you just in this next moment. God, I ask that as you are being able to illuminate our minds to the issues that are going on, the problems that we've just observed, God, I ask that you release boldness over everyone in this room to feel confident to step up. Confident that as we step up, not just in our strength, but in the strength and the power of our God, we could see miracles take place. We could see not our strength, but you meet us in the middle of that to be able to see lives transformed, miracles released, hope restored to so many people. God, we need to see you move. We know that as we engage in the problems, we're engaging in the things that you're already present in. We need more of you. And with your eyes closed, I want to just talk to another group of you for a second. I know some of you are not in that spot where you're saying, I've got something on my heart. You're saying, I feel like that man with that deformed hand. I feel like that person. And I just want to remind you, God sees you. God is not unaware. He's not waiting for you to get his attention. He's been present with that same type of anger, that righteous passion, saying, this wasn't the way I intended your life to be. I wanted you to be restored. I wanted you to be whole. I wanted things changed. I want to ask for those of you who have never made a decision to follow Jesus, Or maybe you've walked away and you know, I need to come back. I want to let you know he sees you. But in this moment, we get to do what this man did. Because in a moment, I'm going to ask you to just raise your hand up in the air just like this man did. As a sign of saying, God, could you see me? Could you change this? Not just a hand, but my life. Because I know there's parts of it that aren't right. I know there's parts of it that need fixed. There's an entirety of it that needs surrendered to you. If that's you and you need to give your life to Jesus, you need to make a clear moment that I am surrendering my life to Jesus. I'm just going to ask you right now, put your hand up in the air. Be bold like that man. Be bold like that person to say, I am submitting my life to Jesus. It might feel vulnerable for a moment to be able to say it. I'm sure it was vulnerable for that man to be able to put it before Jesus. But he restores our life. He heals our life. He is able to change things that no other person is able to do. With your hand raised with everybody in the room, I want you to just repeat this prayer after me. Say this. Say, Jesus, I'm choosing you right now. Please forgive me of my sins. Forgive me of everything I've done wrong. I believe you died on a cross and you came back to life. So I trust you with my life now. The deformed and ugly parts of it, the good parts of it, and the best parts of it, I surrender every single part of it to you. From this moment on and forever, I submit my life to you. Amen.